Well, good morning, everyone. It's always good to be back in here for one more Sunday lecture. Welcome everyone that's over the internet with us. Today we're going to have a lecture that's going to talk about love your neighbor as yourself, our friend Marco. And as always, before we start our lecture, we are going to have our initial prayer and initial reading with Sandra.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to be doing the reading from the book Happy Life, Untitled Enjoyment Images. Discipline your will. Do not let it be the victim of your responsibility. Start with small actions and maintain order and efficiency in each task. When you have much to do not waste time trying to decide what to do first. Do what is closest, then progress until you have finished all of them. You cannot get to the end of the road if you do not take that first step. The first word starts with this speech. Discipline is responsible for the success of great projects. So let's close our eyes, elevate our thoughts to God, our Creator, to Jesus, our Master of Love, our guiding light. And ask all the spirits present here today, the incarnate and discarnate ones, to guide, to open the minds and the hearts from all of us who are listening to this lecture that was to be given by Marco. We ask all the spirits, the good spirits present here today, to open Marco's mind and mind, so please give us the best gift. Be with us. So, thank you. Marco.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It is fantastic to be here again at TSS in person and live with all of you and talking about something so important, which is the law of love, charity, and justice and charity. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the divine laws, and then we're going to focus specifically on love, which is obviously something that all need to hear about every day, particularly this time. And I'll start by a little passage by Matthew. Matthew says, chapter 22, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? So it's a very pointed question to Jesus, right? So Jesus replies, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So I don't think there's anything more powerful than this to summarize to us what exactly the law of love or love means. Basically, what Jesus is saying is he's representing to us this entire universe is bound by the simple rule that we need to love. Love one another and love others, right? Our neighbors. And then we're going to talk about today, like, who are these neighbors and how I do this, right? Which is something that we all are learning, right? After Jesus came and presented to us by his actions what actually love means. So the divine laws are a set of, rules and guidelines, basically, that explains, how the world functions, right? The creation functions, right? So those are perfect. Those are immutable because God is perfect and immutable. And the more we follow the laws, the divine laws, the happier we'll be. The more we grow, the more we'll have a pathway to perfection. The more we detract or push away from the divine laws, the more we're going to have to go through periods of corrections. And that's some of the things we learn in Spiritism. So the divine laws include, for example, law of worship, and, praise God and understand the creation. law of labor, that we have to work hard for development, betterment of ourselves and society, law of reproduction, that we have to keep, obviously, our existence going, preservation, that we have to preserve ourselves, our lives, that we have to fight for our lives. Law of destruction, which is an interesting one, where things have to be destroyed in a way means that they have to be recycled, right, to create something new. Law of society, that we have to live well in society, we need each other. Law of progress, that every single thing in the universe progresses, right, which is something that we now obviously understand a lot easier and a lot better, right? Law of equality, that we all created exactly the same, and we all have opportunities to grow. Law of liberty, that yes, we have the free will, so we have the ability to grow. And the last one, which is composed of three different things, which we're going to be talking about today, which is the law of justice, love, and charity. Now, so why is this so important? Because as we just heard from Jesus, the law of love really binds everything together. So it's impossible for you to exert the other guidelines, let's put it this way, or the laws, if you're not doing this with the law of love in mind, because otherwise it's going to be really, really, really hard. And it's important to also understand that we are constantly evolving. We change every time, we change every day. So an easy way to do this, and a lot of people don't like to do this, but you can go and look back at your old pictures, right, from 20, 30 years ago, and you look at yourself and you see, well, I've actually changed. I've changed physically, obviously, but we can actually look at the picture and see how we changed as morally, or as a person, as a spirit, because we can remember situations we've been through in that picture. So we have to understand we're always evolving, and this evolution is really part of who we are, and that's why the laws are important, because they guide us, right, in how we do that. Okay. Now, Jesus really, what interesting thing about Jesus, obviously, we talk about this in Spiritism all the time, is that when he came, he was not giving us his speeches about, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to read more about this. He was actually doing what he was teaching. So he was teaching by his own, like himself, like who he was, like his actions, right? And it's interesting because we still look at Jesus now today, like over 2,000 years after, and we still cannot understand certain things, right? For example, we can look at Judas, for example, at the time, right? So how many people to this date say, Judas is a traitor, we gotta send a lot of negative thoughts towards that spirit because look at what he's done. He sold Jesus, for like some coins and all that. We know that story, right? And then we look at Jesus when he approached Jesus. Jesus shared a truckload of love to him when he came, right? Because obviously Jesus knew that was the spirit that was learning, right? And he maybe had some, in his mind, some good intentions about, maybe, if I do this, people are going to revolt and they're going to take over and we're going to win over people over force because there's going to be a revolution when they come and get Jesus, right? Maybe that's what he thought. But it doesn't matter because realistically, all of us, in a scenario like that will probably fail even poorly or worse, right? But we don't understand. So I'll tell you, if Jesus came to my house, and we have this all the time. I think he comes to our house all the time and tells us things. But, if he came to my house and say, here's what you're going to do. You're going to leave all that comfy stuff you live in, the beautiful couch you like to see on, all the fancy stuff you got. You're going to leave all that. You're going to follow me. You're going to follow me in this journey, which we don't have anywhere to stop. And I don't know where we're going to eat. And I actually don't know exactly how we're going to do things. Obviously, do everything, but he's not telling us, right? But you're just going to follow me, and this is how we're going to transform humanity. I'm pretty sure I was going to say no. I'm 100% sure. I was going to say, you know what? Forget it. You're completely out of your mind. Cool. Go on your crazy walk with all those people, right? I'm 100% sure I was going to do that then, and I'm pretty sure I'm still going to do it today. So I'm just giving a perspective that, we look at Jesus' story and we say, oh my God, this is so amazing. But we don't learn because we're still doing exactly the same things. And we're still judging Judas the same way. And this is a spirit that suffered the spiritual world for thousands of years. And he's a lot more involved than every single one of us. Just for having the opportunity of being at Jesus at that time, I can guarantee you that he was ready for it. Anyways, so it's just a perspective for us to understand that we actually don't understand what love is. We don't, right? And this is one example that taking Jesus as the representation of love, we still don't understand him very well as a spirit of as Jesus' spirit, but we don't understand his teachings very well. Okay, so when if you think about how the disciples at that time looked at this, and every single one of the books from the disciples are going to talk about this. So, for example, Peter, chapter 1, the first, he's going to say, now that you have purified yourselves by obeying the truth, which is the divine laws in this case, so that you have sincere love for one another. So now Peter is thinking about this, right? So the fact that Jesus talked about love in such a way really changed every single one of the disciples, right? So he continues, so that you sincere love for each other, love one another deeply from the heart. So Peter reports exactly, so it really left this impression, right? Which is all within us too. John, same thing. So John's going to say in chapter 4, no one has ever seen God. Right? True. But if we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is made complete in us. So we're co-creators. Look at this. So this is John, 2,000 years ago, and these are fishermen, right, walking with Jesus, right? And then we're thinking like, oh, why were they selected? There's like whole lectures about it. I'm not going to talk about it. But I'm just saying how deep the knowledge of this spirit is. That he's telling us, with zero knowledge of anything else at that time, he's telling us, you know what? I don't see God. Like, I don't know. Like, I can't tell what it is. True. That's what the Spirit is telling us. We can't really tell exactly what God is. We talk about the attributes of God because it's so beyond, it's his perfection. It's so beyond of our understanding that we kind of have to tell people what are the guides for us to know what God is. But we can't put a picture on it, right? So that's what John is telling us 2,000 years ago. But he knows one thing, right? If you love one another, right? He's telling you from inside your heart, that's really what God is. Right? That's what it's inside us. So if we have love inside us, there you go. So and we are co-creators because we can use love to spread that love and change the world, right? So that's how John is seeing it. So Matthew, same here. So Matthew chapter 5, 43 to 46 is going to say, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Wow. So let's go back to Matthew. So he's going a step further now. So Matthew, which obviously, the reporting here to us is that he's telling us something that we still don't understand, right? I'll give you examples, right? So imagine that you're in this ginormous lineup, you're standing for 2 hours to get something, right? And there's all these people all trying to do the same thing. And then all of a sudden someone cuts in front of you in the line. And then you're going to say, how do you feel? Like, think about it, right? If you're telling me that you feel great, that you have all this love in your mind, then you're gonna completely forgive from the bottom of your heart to understand that people have different stresses and situations that may lead them to do something that is not socially acceptable. And you're gonna say, you know what? God bless you. I know you probably need it more than I do. It's okay. Just another minute it's gonna take me. Or you're gonna yell at the person, push them out, call security, say this is a disaster, and you start a revolution on the line, right? So tell me which one is more likely to happen, right? Now go back 2,000 years ago. See, now think about Judas, right? That's kind of what he was trying to do, in a sense. He was really trying to make a complete mess, right? And get things, fervently changing, right? He was really in that type of impatience to do something. Obviously, he did what he did. We know that. But, we do kind of the same thing all the time, right? We don't practice what Matthew's telling us, right? which is like, you know what? God is sending sunlight to every. See, he's such a pure way of thinking, right? He's not making things complicated. He's just saying, there's this bad guy here, and there's a good guy across the street, and the sun is coming up, shining on them exactly the same way, every day. Can't argue with that, right? So if God is creating that situation for both of them at the same time, love is exactly distributed the same way, right? Now, these two individuals will take very different routes to evolve, but all of them will be perfect, right? See, what I'm trying to show is that the depth of the knowledge of the spirits that wrote this to us, and we still don't get it, right? Right? So we'll go to this. In Romans 12, it's going to talk about love in action. So this is what they're going to. So it's going to say, love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another, love, honor one another above yourselves, right? Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord, or serving the love, right, of the laws. Be joyful in hope. Joyful in hope, right? Patient in affliction. Right? Faithful in your prayer. Right? Share with the Lord's people people who are in need. In other words, charity. Right? Practice hospitality. Right? So what a perfect guideline. So let's see if we do this. Okay. So joyful in hope. Right? Imagine that you have a situation that you're really aspiring to get. So you're trying to get something and you're hoping that that's going to happen, and you're really thinking about that. You see, I hope that this is going to happen. And now think about that scenario. You think about being joyful at the same time. It's kind of difficult, isn't it? Because every time you're in a scenario that you're really hoping for something, you're probably going to be more stressed about it than actually joyful about it. Isn't it strange? But if you have true faith, you're going to be joyful because you know that you're always going to get it. You just have to work hard and wait for the results. If you see, if you sow, you collect, right? So that's what Jesus is telling us. So this is hard to do, right? So patient in affliction, right? Because afflictions, as we know in Spiritism, are really the manifestation or the consequence of an action. So it's a reaction to an action, right? And we have to go through this. There's really, we can do a lot of things to mitigate it, but eventually we have to face it, right? So patience means understanding that we have to learn through that. That's not easy, right? But we have to work hard on it. And again, this is coming from a book that was written over 2,000 years ago through the examples of Jesus, right? So think about the power of all of that. Okay? So let's bring now back to Spiritism. So in the Spirits book, chapter 10, there's a specific section there just about the law of justice, love, and charity. And one thing I'm going to add here is that the law of justice, love, and charity is not like three different laws combined into one. Right? And this is something confusing, and a lot of people, even in Spiritism, sometimes don't really understand. Is that why are they combined? Okay, let's take a step at a time. So the first aspect is justice, right? So what does justice mean? So in a common and basic sense, justice means doing right for what's right. In other words, having a common sense of what is right and what is wrong, and achieving the justice or the equilibrium between justice, or what's correct, or what is right. The second part is love, which is actually what is right. Right? So the law of justice, it means that it is the consequence of enacting love. Right? So the justice is basically defined by love. So that's why they're combined. Right? And then the third part is charity, which is actually the consequence of doing the right thing, acting with love, and having it in action. So that's the third step of that little pathway. So in a way, this is the same thing. So justice, love, and charity are the same law. So you can't do one separate from another, right? You can't be loving and not have justice, right? Or you can't not be loving and not put it in action, right? So your love is really not there yet, right? Because the love has to be developing, growing, and being in action, right? So question 876. Allan Kardec is going to ask the spirits, apart from the rights established by human laws, we talk about what is the basis of justice according to the natural law of the divine? So now that's exactly what he's asking the spirits, is that, what is actually, justice, right? In a sense of the divine laws, not for our own laws, right? So this is what the spirits are going to answer. Christ told you, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. God has placed each one of you the desire to see your own rights respected. We do have that, right? And we can go through history, in every single element in history where, there's revolutions and changes and things, they're all driven by this innate sense that we expect that our rights to be respected. And then we develop in ourselves the ability to understand what are our rights, then we enact them. And then we say, okay, this is not okay, right? For example, like look nowadays how it is socially acceptable or not acceptable to do things now that were done diffusely 20 years ago, 30 years ago. In the 60s and 70s, which is actually not that long ago, segregation was a common rule, right? So people would not be able to come in here and sit down defined by the color of their skin, which is completely absurd to us if you think it is today, right? And then in probably in a few years, hopefully, and we're going to get there, this is going to be really history, and everyone will be treated equally. It's going to happen, right? I don't know when, I think. But it all started with the development of the sense of how we see each other, how we respect each other, and that evolves from this innate sense that is seated on us that, change has to happen, right? It may be delayed, but will happen, right? And that's true justice, right? When uncertain as to what we should do in regard to others, so that's what the Spirit is saying, just to make it clear, right? So you don't have interpretations of the truth, right? We should ask ourselves what we would want others to do to us under the same circumstances. So God could not give us a safer guide than our own conscience, right? So it cannot be more simple than this. So what is justice according to the divine laws? It's basically putting yourself in someone else's shoes and see what you wanted to happen to you in that scenario, right? Think about it. And then if we do that on a daily basis, actually we do realize there's a lot of things we do wrong. A lot, right? But we don't really think about it, right? And we can take examples from common things, from daily things, right? For example, yesterday I had to call a call center to complain about something that happened in a delivery to my house. And while I was doing that, I very quickly realized that I was putting that person across the line for me in a situation that they had absolutely nothing to do with it. Right? That is a person that the responsibility is to address my concern and make things correct based on the system of they work on. Right? But our initial instinct is to lay bare to that individual our frustrations with what happened, which are completely ridiculous, right? It's just like one thing is delayed a day or something, right? Or something came missing a part, which is actually not a problem, right? But we do have this tendency of doing that, right? Reflecting to that individual our own frustrations. So while I was starting to do that, I actually stopped for 1 second, and I actually preparing for the lecture. Preparing for lectures. So I actually thought, what am I doing now? So what would I actually want to hear if I was actually that person? What would I expect Marco to do if Marco was actually across the line and listening to me? Right? And then I stopped for 10 seconds and I'm like, this is all wrong. Like everything on this conversation right now is actually wrong, right? Because one, yes, sure, there are commitments from another party in a contract that they have to deal with. Yes, absolutely. Two, things can happen, right? Three, that person has nothing to do with any of this, right? And I said, you know what? What's your name? And the person said his name. It's like, you know what? I totally understand you. Like, I cannot even bear to imagine how many people like me, or worse than me, or maybe better than me, But how many people are doing exactly what I'm doing to you on a daily basis? Think about this. Now imagine if your job, and we complain about jobs, but imagine if your job is basically to get a bunch of frustrated people to call you and get upset to you about something they have not done. They have not done it, right? They're just picking up the call. Someone else did a mistake, or maybe not. But now try to picture yourself in that scenario and think about, how would you feel and how would you expect to be treated? Geez, that was really a transformational moment in a phone call to me. Absolutely. And I have to tell you, this is weird things that happen, but it made me really change a lot about a lot of things in 10 seconds, right? And I totally changed things. You know what? I totally understand you. That's fine. Write your notes. I know you have to write a long note in your system to, kind of search what happened before. But you know what? You're doing a great job. Thank you. I said to the person, right? Because, I told the person, I cannot even imagine what you go through on a daily basis. Like how many of these calls you get. What's the energy that you get in the end of one of these calls, right? And you know what? Thank you for doing what you're doing. Because if it wasn't for you, how could I ever be able to solve my problems, right? So that person is an intermediary for change to me. But I'm shooting the messenger, right? And I'm actually not getting anything done. Because if I get that person upset, how am I going to solve anything? It makes it even more complicated to me. So I do expect, if I was in that position, at least someone will be polite to me, right? Bingo, right? So, because things don't happen in isolation, they tend to happen 2 or 3 times in a cluster, right? And that's kind of science. So yesterday, I was also expecting to have a technician visit to my house to do something completely different. And then this person came, and he was absolutely not aware of the fact that I wanted something different from what he could offer. So he came to the house and said, I'm here to offer this. And then I told him, no, this has absolutely nothing to do with what I want. I actually called for that. And then he was like, I don't understand. I'm here to give you this. I'm like, no, I don't want it. And then in that scenario, again, because I was kind of prepared from the previous call, I said, you know what? I said, thank you for coming. It's so nice of you to come here on a Saturday afternoon where I'm all comfy playing with my kids. You're actually working in the cold to come to my house. Yes, you're actually not doing the right thing, what I kind of expected to do, but that's okay, right? Thank you for coming anyways. I don't know, how long do you drive to get here? I don't know, maybe half an hour, right? How many calls did you have in a day? I don't know, 20? You go to people's houses and you're not in your house and you're doing all this thing. And I said, you know what, that's fine. I'm gonna call your company afterwards, we'll sort it out, right? But again, simple things that we do on a daily basis, right? And we keep talking about loving one another all the time, but we're not enacting it. And that's really what Jesus is starting to tell us. So if we say that we do understand the law of love, I don't think we're telling the truth. Because I know me, Marco here, I don't. Right? I don't understand it. I'm kind of grasping it. I'm kind of, I can probably, when I put my glasses on, I take my glasses off and I try to look at you in the back there. It's kind of how I see the law of love right now, right? Kind of, it's there. I know you're there, but I can't really see it. But if I put my glasses on, maybe I can kind of see where it is. But I'm not in it. I can't feel it. It's not really completely inside of me yet, right? And that's another thing in psychology about how we're actually evolved when the laws are actually part of who we are. Anyways, it's a different topic, but it's important for us to think about. Okay. Now, so Alamkar continues in the same chapter in 8 Tennessee. Okay. So what actually love means, right? And I don't know, people actually sometimes don't. This is the gospel according to Spiritism, and we don't think about it. So define love. Now that's a question that I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to answer on my own words in a reasonable way in less than, I don't know, a short period of time. It's not easy, right? You can compare love, and that's what we do all the time. So we say, what is love? Love is that, like something else, right? So we're actually not defining love, we're actually comparing what we think love is with something also exciting and nice that is different from love, right? You say, oh, love is like being caring. It's like, yeah, love is caring, but love actually is a lot more than caring, right? They're not actually the same. Love is, being together. Like, yeah, but you can be apart and not the same way. Like, that's not a definition of love, right? Love is, and I remember in the 80s, they had this little things, like the little notes that you had, like love is like 3 points, and then there's like a lot of things after it, and then it's like a lot of interesting stuff. But you always say, love is like, I don't know, it's like, having this good experience. Like, no, it's not. Like that is actually a tiny little fraction of what love is. Right? It's like an effect of love. It's actually not what love is. Right? So actually, every time you hear people talking about love, in general, a lot of people know better than I do. But in general, they're actually going to be comparing experiences and kind of relating them to love, which is interesting because it's just a fraction of what love is. But Allan Kardec says in the Gospel that in the deepest sense of the word, love means being loyal, honest, conscientious, right? In order to do unto others what would you want them to do unto you. So it is, again, we're going back to the divine laws. So basically, the law of love is pretty much the most important commandment that Jesus tells us, and that's what Jesus actually did, which is love one another and do unto others what we expect people to do unto you. So that is the essence of love. And to do that, you got to be honest, right? I'll give you an example, right? So let's see. Let me say, do unto others what we expect to do unto you, and then you pretend to be super nice to someone, because we do this all the time, right? And don't say we don't do it, because we do it, right? A lot of scenarios in life, we to actually live in this world, sometimes we develop this little shell to our ego that allows us to do certain things, although we actually don't actually believe in that, but we do it just to be accepted in society, right? But we can go there and kind of say, oh, you're such a nice person, and that. And then we walk back and say, oh, yeah, it's like, I can't stand that, right? So if we can do that and say, I'm going to do unto that person, I'm going to be there for 2 seconds and be nice, so I'm going to be nice. So I'm doing unto them what they kind of expect. But then I turn back and then I undo that. That is not honest, right? That doesn't count, right? So just saying that, oh, yeah, no, I'm going to go visit that person, but, I actually don't want to do it, but, I'll just do it. Just to kind of be nice. Being nice is interesting because you can't be nice in that sense, because either you are nice, right? Or you kind of pretend to be nice. But, so that's why Kardec added that honesty, the honest word before it, right? Because we pretend to do things. And to be conscientious, right? In other words, to think carefully about the consequences and conditions of things. Like just try to put yourself into that scenario and think about all the possibilities, right? Being conscientious about that. So that is important. And then he'll continue. It means searching around yourself, so searching around us, for the inner meaning of all the hardships that oppress your brothers and sisters, so that you may bring them relief. It means regarding the great human family as your own, for you will meet this family in a certain time of more advanced worlds. And the spirits who compose it are, like yourselves, children of God destined to dwell forever. Now, this is really going beyond, because what he's saying is that, got to look around you and kind of see, what's happening to people beside you, because we're blind, right? We're blind to what happens beside us sometimes. We can get super upset because, something happened somewhere else in the world. We hear the news and like, oh my God, that is so challenging, it's so bad. I don't know why that person's being murdered like this, or being doing like that, or someone did something bad to another person there. And sometimes you have another person that is in our inner circle that is going through hardships, and we barely know. Okay, so we completely oblivious to us, right? someone who's going through some psychological stress or other work-related issues, emotional stress. Like think about a pandemic, right? How many people are going through a hard time? They're not COVID positive or in a hospital with intubated, but they're still going with a hard time. And we're completely oblivious to that. And we kind of ignore what we could do to help, right, to reach out. Like a phone call or, just trying to reach out and just check on people. And that's what Kurt is saying. But not only doing that to the ones that are close to us, but the entire family of humans as one family, right? So imagine that if we understand that everyone that we know, the worst criminals and the most evolved spirits that we can think about, all of us will go to the same direction. So all of us will meet down the road in some other planet, in some other place, and we're going to be all like this big family, right, of spirits and happy and evolved. So if you think about it that way, it's a lot easier for us to really share true love with other people, right, and stop judging them all the time, right? And it's interesting because we when we have kids, and well, I have 3 kids, and when we're dealing with them in a way, like helping them, teaching them on a daily basis, we keep telling them all the time, oh, pay attention, focus on yourself, stop focusing on what other people are doing, stop judging that person for this and this, right? But we don't do it, right? We're telling them, don't do this, don't do, and then we catch ourselves doing it. So how strange that is, right? That we have an incredible ability of telling someone else, like, what are you wrong and what they should or should not be doing. But we ourselves actually don't do that, right? That's the honest component here that Kardec is telling us. Like, you can't do that, right? So, anyways, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. Now, so we're kind of going down to more to the end of the story here, but so I really wanted to tell you this interesting story, and I'm gonna get there very, very soon. So this is a story. It's called Mutual Help. It's in the book Jesus in the Home by Shikshagir, right? And the chapter basically tells a very interesting story. So the story of 2 individuals that were crossing through a long distance in the desert, and it was a very, very long journey, and they were, running behind, obviously, and the weather was coming, so they were having a hard time going through. They were barely kind of making through, and then they see a little child that could not make it. Basically, was suffering, and it was there in the way. So one of the travelers says, you know what, this is just too much for us. We're not going to be able to make it. We can't help. We gotta rush and get to the next city as soon as possible, because we can't help. Sorry, that's it. It's all done. And the child is there, and the person is there. And then the other traveler said, that makes no sense to me. This is an individual that needs our help. We're here to help, and it's okay. We're going to get delayed, but I'm going to stay and help this child. And then the other said, okay, goodbye. I'm going to go, and I'm going to get to the next city in time and be safe. Okay. So that's what happened. So the traveler that stayed behind, he obviously provided some water, some resources, and stayed with that with the other person for a while, and really shared some good vibrations and good thoughts and warming thoughts, and hugged and supported, and then eventually decided to carry the person. Right? So you know what? I'm just going to carry this child with me, and they did. So they encountered very challenging, like freezing rain, dropping temperatures, wind. And it was a bad storm. And he thought he was not going to make it. It was a very hard journey, but eventually, although it was very challenging, they made it to the next stop. So when they arrived there, he asked about his friend, right? And then the people in the city said, no one else came. So actually, you're the first person to come after the storm. And then he's like, okay, I don't understand what happened. And then he realized that his other traveler could not make it. So he got really, really cold. He couldn't get to the next city. He ended up perishing in the journey, right? And then that's the kind of the end of the story. Jesus stops there this is during a conversation with the disciples. And then he said, the traveler that was able to carry the child, the warmth of their both bodies combined protected them both from the cold weather. So that is mutual help, right? So you can't really be perfect if you're not perfect together, right? If you're not helping others in the same journey with you. You can't be this incredibly perfect individual by pushing down the other ones who are trying to go through. That's not perfection, right? So the fact that both of the child and the traveler were together, chest to chest during the journey, was actually what prevented them from perishing during the journey. And the other one who had the more selfish-based intentions to basically save himself, and that's it. Eventually, because he was alone, he could not protect himself from the weather. So, that message is quite important nowadays, particularly because now we're seeing, what happened with the pandemic and, what we have to do. And it kind of addresses some basic points. For example, why should we get vaccinated? Right? Why should we, use PPE like we're doing here, and the masks and isolate and clean and all that? Why should we do all of this, right? Because we're really providing exactly the testimony here of the mutual help, right? We're helping each other, and we're doing it, and we're doing this we're actually putting the entire planet in a situation that we have to make choices and decisions, right? So imagine this is like this incredibly challenging trial that is presented to every single individual on the planet at the same time, where we all are going to have to make decisions, right? And all those decisions have to take in consideration others, right? Particularly for the ones who, claim to be healthy and to have already been, particularly the ones that are like, okay, this is not going to affect me. That's the guy that walked by himself, right? Like, this is not going to affect me. Like, why do I care, right? I'm just going to continue my journey, and I'm going to save myself. So this is a perfect story for nowadays, because it exemplifies to us that at the end of this journey, you're going to be able to separate those who did it with real love, honest love, and supporting and helping each other from those who did not, because those unfortunately will have to face the consequences of their own actions. It's going to happen. It is going to happen, right? No matter how our civil laws or judicial system sees this, it doesn't matter how the government sees this, it will happen in the divine laws, right? Because their consciousness will be affected by this, okay? So what else can we do, right? So if you think about that, okay, so everything we're talking about is really putting ourselves into the other person's perspective and trying to do to that person what we expect that, is going to happen to us. If we start to do this on a daily basis, things can change. I know, obviously, I gave you one tiny little example of a phone call that I had, but if you think about this in your daily life, like every time you interact with another person or think about another person, or you have an opportunity to do something to another person, try to put ourselves really into that person's situation and kind of what you expect to happen to you, right? And this is not as easy as it sounds, because sometimes we don't understand what the other people's perspective, right? And that's, I think, is one of the failures here about our own failures, is that, for example, not understanding that although someone may have a smile on their face, they actually may be quite going through a lot of challenges. And not understanding that if the images that we create about someone being happy and successful and perfect they may not be real,
Mhm.
right? And that person may actually be going through a lot of challenges and dealing with a lot of things and having a hard time or struggling a lot, right? But if we don't get through it, that cloud that we create around us there, it's going to be very hard for us to make a definitive impact here. Like the phone call is an example because you cannot see what's going on the other side. Although you do. Like if you stop for a second and think about it, you can actually visualize it, right? But we tend to ignore it because we're not kind of seeing it. It's like someone who's writing, like tweeting about something in a very aggressive way and kind of talking bad about other people because they're shielded by that impression that the screen is like a barrier that, like it's just, it's just words, right? But Spiritism tells us it's not, right? Every time we're typing a word and send it, that energy that we create in our thoughts, go with it. Right? It's going to hit the person the same way. It's going to connect into that person the same way, even without computers, right? It may be in a positive way or in a negative way, right? So if we first say, what are we going to do? So how about we start by not judging other people, right? Maybe that's too hard. But maybe if we just start by trying not to project a lot of negative stuff onto people, maybe that we can start with. And say, let me tone down my negativity levels to about 10%. I don't know. If we start by doing that, we may be able to do it, right? And then we substitute that 10% negativity that we got rid of by 10% positive things, right? That's a good start, maybe, right? To say, you know what? I'm just going to take my medication today, and my medication is going to be really think about positive things about other people. And don't get trapped in that nonsense of basically like, oh, everything's bad, the world's bad, like there's fires everywhere, like, oh my God, the economy, and this really crazy nonsense guy, president of another country. Like, stop it, right? Don't get trapped into that like a whirlwind roller coaster of negativity, right? Yes, of course we got to be conscientious, we got to understand what's happening, we need to have our voice, we need to, of course, but don't get into the trap of being part of the problem, right? By just constantly aggression onto others. That is not a solution. So aggression is never a solution, right? So if I see someone, oh, but this person actually said something really, really bad, and I go there and say something even worse to that person, I'm not solving anything. I'm just contributing to a cycle that now I'm trapped into, right? Because my negativity is there too. It's like, everyone's pulling that until the bag comes. So I'm right there right now. So maybe that's a place to start. Or even like in little things in life, with people in your house and your kids and, in your workplace, trying to understand the challenges that the other person is going through, be more patient, right? And try to control that instinctive response that we sometimes have to be aggressive back, right? So even send an email, right? And I tell this to everyone, like, are you going to write that email? Just write it tomorrow, right? Don't write it down. I tell this all the time because I fell in that trap before. I know, right? Not because I'm very smart, because I actually face the consequences of doing it. And I'm like, gotta slap my hands, like, okay, can't do this again, right? So every time I have that really, really angry, upset email to write about, I just don't write it, right? Now with the WhatsApp voice thing, right? Record it. And then you let the button go, and then you send already. Right? You're like, no, stop it, take it back, right? So take a second, don't do it, right? Because again, that is exactly what you don't expect people to do to you. That's exactly the opposite of what the primary first So Jesus is telling us, like, listen, even if you don't read anything about anything ever, like you're completely oblivious to everything I told you ever or to what I've done, even if you don't believe me, that's fine. Just do it to others would expect.
And sometimes you can even write,
Yeah.
but don't send it.
Yes,
But
that's right.
Read it the next day.
You're gonna be
Because you
surprised.
definitely are going to be learning something about yourself.
Absolutely, and that's so true. Like you just save that draft, and then you look at back next day, and like,
Oh my God, where was I?
am I writing this? You know, am I this person? It's like,
Yes, I was at
Yes.
that moment.
Yeah,
I was
now-
that person.
now I'm
Yeah.
moving over, right? So anyways, let's try to make those little changes, like every time, and that's really what the law of justice, love, and charity means. Like put that into action. Okay, so that's what I have to talk about today. So I think you're gonna come in and have some questions.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marco, for the lecture today. It was actually quite good. Made me remember for a few moments.
I know. That's what happens when you study for the lecture, right?
Yeah.
Things start to happen, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I should study.
Yeah, it doesn't happen for any person.
No.
It
I
happens
remember
for
during the
this.
pandemic, the CEO sent an email that should be just his assistant went to the whole hospital and then it had to be retrieved, right? And it was one of those angry ones. Now, and then we had to send another one to apologize. But I think we all have done that, right? Just heat of the moment, we do it. But it's just about being more conscious and heat of the moment or not on a call or on a message or anything. This is so important. And we don't see that as being as a love, right? As a concept of love, right? It's part of this love your neighbors. Yeah. Any other comments or?
I think we should love ourselves too, in a way that when I was saying about keep the email, don't send it, keep the draft and read it the next day. So try not to hit yourself for what you were feeling, but try to understand where this feeling is coming from. And when you do that, this is a big step towards your growth. So it's by being loving towards yourself and knowing that you are in this journey to grow, to become a better person today than I was yesterday when I was feeling this way. So it's also a learning process, and I think it's an amazing thing. And if you see yourself as this being in a project, like you are a project being and you're growing, you can be loving towards yourself, but conscious where your faults are where you still have to grow. So it was a great reminder, Marco. Thank you so much for your lecture.
That's why the law says, love your neighbor as yourself. So be
Yeah.
tolerant towards yourself, be forgiving towards yourself,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That's very important. Because if you don't love ourselves, then how am I gonna keep love that I?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Joe, any comments on the internet or? Okay.
No comments.
All right.
Anyway, Mark, since you're up here, do you mind doing the final prayer
Yes,
for us
I'll do.
today?
Perfect. So let us all take this moment and connect ourselves with this beautiful energy that's coming from above and touching every one of us. This beautiful, light, loving energy that connects us, that purifies us. Let us feel that taking our minds, our hearts, every single one of us. And that is now connected to our Creator, Father, Mother, God. We would like to thank for everything that we have, for who we are, for our opportunities, our lessons, our challenges. And we ask our Master Jesus and all the spirits that help us in this journey to give us the strength, honesty, the energy to continue on this pathway of evolution, to making changes that we need to make, loving one another always, supporting one another always, putting in practice the beautiful message and the laws that Jesus brought to us through his actions.
And may we spread to this entire family living on this planet the same feelings, the same vibrations. Thank you for the opportunity of being here together today. And may we continue during this week with these reflections about the importance of the love. Thank you so much.